We are here with Shawn Rosler to talk about his podcast, The Coarse Grind. Let's start with introductions. Obviously, you are Shawn Rosler.
Last I checked, I'm pretty sure. I'm not certain most days, but most days that's what it registers back. 1995 high school graduate, which means I came to Bloomsburg in 1995, and I've been here ever since. Graduated in 2000 with a degree in secondary education, English, which is why you're here. And then also in 2002 with a master's degree in instructional technology. So that's me.
All right.
That's at least my tie back to Bloomsburg, which is what we always like to cap off, like to brand it, Bloomsburg.
All right, cool.
Go Huskies.
So after you graduated, what did you immediately start doing after? And how does that compare to what you're doing now?
You
gotta think back.
Well, it depends on what you mean by what did you do right after you graduated. Because technically, I graduated from undergrad and I went to grad school. I wasn't ready to be an adult. I'm still not, to be perfectly fair. I think you picked that up already. Right out of school with the master's, though, and truth be told, it pulled on the English degree, too. I was writing training for Dr. Harold Bailey, who was the former chair of the IIT, and I just happened to intern for him and worked in his basement. From there, handful of other little industry jumps, hops, and blips. But for the most part, you know, I can say honestly, from 2001 to present day, the being able to communicate portion is key. And I think it goes without saying that having a degree in English does it all. Does it all completely. So.
Yeah, we recently had the College of Liberal Arts Symposium, and we had a panel of other English alumni, and they all said along the lines of the same thing. With whatever they're doing now, there's like a copy editor, there's an author, there's
That's it.
Corporate storytelling.
You can't do anything without communicating in some way. And what better way to learn than to learn the language, learn to leverage the language. So.
Okay, so jumping off that, communication, podcasts. How did you get to start up this podcast? Where did the idea come from?
The idea, the core concept, came from a dear high school friend of mine who's now turned lifelong friend and the highest paid producer on the Coarse Grind podcast, because he's the only one he doesn't get paid. But he was a dear friend of mine, John Robinson. He invited me to be on his podcast. This would have been back circa 2014. And it was this very kind of nihilist, anarchist, libertarian, crazy podcast. And like I was kind of the straight guy, like the, kind of the stiff suit in the room. But it was a lot of fun. And it turned out to just be a format that I really appreciated because I like that format. And so fast forward a bit, over dinner, I was having dinner with my wife at Seasons on Main. Dear friend Gary, episode number 4. But before episode 4 happened and before I knew who Gary was, really, I looked at my wife and I said, what do you think about a food podcast? And she, in turn went, well, I don't know of any. And she's not a podcast person, but whatever. And so I said, okay, I'm going to shake some trees. I'm going to see if I can get some people. So I asked a handful. The first person I asked was Chef Dakota Weiss. She was from Top Chef Season 7, Texas. And I had come into contact with her via Facebook because I would watch Top Chef and I just add them up so that I could watch their stories. And back then, I don't know that they were necessarily as shielded as they are now. And so Dakota, accepted. And I just asked him, like, hey, would you maybe want to talk to me for like a half an hour on the phone on an interview? She said, sure. A couple other people. And all of a sudden we were at 5 episodes. And I thought, well, if I get 5, I'm doing all right. If I get 10, I'm doing good. And as so many things go, 10 became 20, 20 became 30, 30 became 50. A live show at BTE, they gave me the space for the night, and it was crazy. It was awesome. Someone even got drug out by the cops. So, that's always a good time. And then we just did 100 Live with Beth Oretsky from Anthony Bourdain Kitchen Confidential fame. And Brian Balthazar from my hometown of Honesdale, which he's a regular co-host on like the Today Show and stuff like that, and just happened to be from my hometown. So I asked if he'd do it and took it up. So I think when you get the idea, if you take it back to 2014, when you have the idea, you don't know where it's going to go. And I think it's important that you always stay rooted in that, you don't expect the world of it, or you're going to be immediately disappointed. One of the common themes on the show, actually, is that now, as opposed to, say, the late 90s, now culinary students are coming out of the CIA and, immediately they want their exec chef position and they want their reality show on Food Network and they want this and they want that. And what's great to hear is this unified, resounding, get the hell out of here from pretty much everybody I interview. Like, you got to take your bumps. You got to take your licks. I am by no means a culinary professional. I have, however, shown that I can hold my own plating for 300 people. So, I am just as happy to be head down, getting barked at by the executive chef and watching plates go out. There's a sick, twisted fun behind it. I don't know how else to put it than that.
I can understand that. And I think it's very true, the idea that people nowadays, like, they'll come out of school, they'll come out of undergrad, they'll come out of graduate school, and they'll immediately think, I need to be the best. I need to, once I get out of school, I need to start as the best.
Yeah, and that's I don't want to roll into my show format here and start dropping 4-letter words, but it's obscene that, by the way, that's my cat, if you're listening. One of 3. My wife used to be allergic. Go with it. It really is an alarming trend to see that people are coming out with such high expectations. I really didn't expect a thing when I came out. I wanted money in my pocket. I wanted to be able to pay my apartment rent. Mm-hmm. That's all I had. And having interviewed some, recent graduates or, recently graduated, their expectations are just so blown out of proportion. So I think if there's anything, and I'm not saying this to say to you at 21, 22, if you're the traditional route or any other age, I'm not saying don't expect great things, but don't expect them without really garbage things sometimes too. I waited tables with a master's degree because that's what I had to do to get to the next rung. And it's one of the best lessons of my life. You do what you have to do. You find out what you're worth. There's a motivational video that I ripped the audio out of on YouTube, and it says something to the effect of, it's easy to be positive when you have your health, you have your job, you have your money. It's easy to be positive then. You want to show me what you're worth. Be positive when the job offers aren't calling, when they're not knocking on your door, and I think you have to be okay with that. People, I think too, not to park things on parents, because I'm a parent now and that might be self-deprecating, but I think now parents set their kids up with this almost like, well, I did it, so you should do it too. Mm-hmm. Like no, not yet, and not that fast. Let them stumble, let them fail. A lot of shielding I see of failures that my parents were all too happy to let me fail. They loved it because they knew what was coming. Failure is the best teacher ever. So, I think if I can encapsulate that point into kind of a bullet point, stay humble, no matter where you are in the cycle. I actually had the wonderful opportunity while I was out in Vegas at a conference to meet with, oddly enough, a gentleman named Shawn. And he was a second semester student in the grad program that I'm in. He was actually showing his work as a student in the demo fest, as they call it. Basically, it's an expo for, showing your work. And, we started to talk about it, and he started to say how, I wonder if I belong here. I wonder if and I said to him, Shawn, I'm 42, and I've been here for 10 years, and I still question that every time I'm here. Mm-hmm. The moment you don't, stay home, because you're going to be more of a detriment than a compliment. Mm-hmm. Humility is so clutch in everything. Sorry, we are so off track, but
But yeah, humility is important. It's important to start projects not with too high of hopes. That's something I've been trying to do myself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My wife, actually, who also a Bloom alum, she was a nursing student at Bloom, she's given me one of the best quotes, and I adore this, and I implore you to program it into yourself. Perfect is the enemy of good.
I like that.
That's got some substance. Like, chew on that for a while and think about that, because really it is. Like, you won't get to good if you're focused on perfect. You won't get to that entry-level position that will position you on an upward trend if you're just dead-ass focused on the C-suite job. You won't get there. You'll be blinded by that aspiration that won't come to pass. Perfect is the enemy of good.
All right. So, we've got our life lessons down.
See that?
All right.
It's a multifaceted show, kids.
All right, so circling back to the podcast, to the English degree, to starting out, low expectations, humble beginnings.
Yeah.
How did you go about creating it? Like, you've had some experience with your friend's podcast. How did you go about creating your own?
I leaned on him so hard, I'm surprised his back didn't break. I'm like, John, I need you. John, I need you. John, I need you. I'm surprised he didn't just tell me, like, all right, tell you what, I'll take your idea and run with it. He could have, and he would have been justified in doing so, but I leaned on. And I think that's an important point, is that, look, along with the humility, you have to have realistic expectations of yourself. And one of those expectations has to be, you can't know everything. You won't know everything. My 9-year-old, just tonight, he came out of a swimming lesson. Now, he just started competitive swimming last year. By the end of the year, he broke a school record. Right?
That's cool.
He hasn't worked on his dive yet. But, he goes and he does this, right? Goes and he does this. And this week, they're working on entries and flip turns. And he comes out tonight, he's got his head down, looking like someone, shook salt in his Cheerios. And I go, what's wrong, buddy? He goes, Daddy, I still can't dive. Everybody else in my group can dive, but I can't. Only the 5 and the 6-year-olds are the only ones that can't dive, which, let's take that with a grain of salt. He's 9, he's exaggerating probably. But with that said, you think about that heaviness that we put on ourselves, that, I should be able to do this. And so I said to him, I said, Chaz, how long have you been swimming? A year. All right. And were you number 1 on your team for backstroke? Yeah. Did you break 20 seconds on your 25-meter freestyle? Yep. 19.89.
Oh, my gosh.
And I looked at him and I said, so how are you going to give yourself that much ration of crap about not being able to do one aspect of that? And I have used this before in explaining why sometimes some things come easier and some things don't. If you play video games are a great example of how learning works. I said to him, I said, Chaz, you backstroke number 1, freestyle, you broke 20, breaststroke and butterfly you're working on, and they were putting them in for the races. Cool. So you leveled up all those 4 buckets like a lot. You left your dive down here, you forgot about it. Here's the problem. Now, because of your heightened awareness over here, it's going to take more experience than it would have at the beginning to learn to dive. And so, that comes into play with so much stuff, And so as I'm starting to podcast, as you look at all these technical lessons and all that you have to learn, I could have gotten discouraged mad easy, mad early. But instead, I reached out to others. And I think we fail to do that because, and this goes to one of my colleagues who I presented with in Vegas, Jane Bozarth. She wrote a book called Show Your Work. And it seems like it just shouldn't be a question mark. But when it comes to expressing that our work is incomplete, that our work is imperfect, that we lack knowledge, we hesitate to do so because of what it does to us, what we perceive it does socially. And so I was all too fine with asking John and letting him run with it. And that's really been a life lesson for me going forward. In my new position with Red Nucleus out of Yardley, Pennsylvania, we design and develop training for pharmaceutical sales representatives. I don't know what prescribing information is. I don't know the first thing about follicular lymphoma, but here I was writing training on it today because I have a seasoned team of medical writers surrounding me, and I can reach out, and I feel comfortable to do so. So, if you don't know, ask. Getting back to the core of the question, though, how it all began, it was a lot of asking for help. It was a lot of, how does this work? How does this work? For the first almost 20 episodes, I would do them via Skype. And I had a Skype recording software that, I would do the call through my computer, and it would record the audio internally. Mm-hmm. We had quality issues, and, it just wasn't the best. So literally now, and this is why, when people ask me how much it costs to start podcasting and everything, I said, you got a phone? Mm-hmm. You got a mic for your computer? Cool, done. Even what you're doing here, export that. Yeah. Download Audacity. It's free. Sweeten the audio, clip out the ums, ahs, ers, everything, and go. I think the one thing to mention, too, is that the format was probably the easiest, and I think for a lot of people, determining format is hard. Determining format and content is like the stumbling block for them. For me, that happened immediately because of a famous photographer, Melanie Dunea. She did 2 coffee table books, My Last Supper and The Next Course. And it's 50 world famous chefs, and they're playing the late night drinking game that they always play. You're gonna die tomorrow. What's your last meal? And the way the questions were set up, I loved it. I'm like, that's what I want to do. That's the format I want. And so the content was already there. I knew that I wanted it to be food. And what's funny is that, I've had tons of people from Top Chef and from Food Network, and one of them, who's a very famous chef, Richard Blais from Top Chef. He was the big molecular gastronomy guy. He was on the show, and just raving about it. He loved it. And I'm like, wow, this is so cool. I got Richard Blais on. 2 weeks later, I open Instagram, and I see this new handle, Starving for a Pod. And I look. I'm like, yo, that's Richard Blais. That's a podcast? That's a food podcast. Starving for attention. And I started to watch his guest flow, and they were 3 back from mine.
Oh my God.
So he was basically doing the shark, chumming in the wake. So part of me was flattered. Part of me was like, Richard Blais stole my stuff. He didn't really steal my stuff, but...
copying is the sincerest form of flattery.
Amen. So I kind of let that one die down a little bit. I'm going to reach out to him soon, too, and maybe do a follow-up. Mm-hmm. See how he's doing, see how we're doing. So, but it's cool. It's cool to watch it grow. It's cool, just like any other skill that you begin to really hone, really focus on. It's a lot of fun.
So as it has grown, you've taken on Bloomsburg University interns, which mm-hmm. is really awesome, sticking to the alma mater and everything. So how do they help with the podcast? I got no choice. There's no other university around, so I'm stuck with Bloom. I'm stuck with Dr. Wemple. You hear that? No, Jerry's a great guy, and I'm eternally grateful to him for the help that he's offered. Again, the internship is a classic exercise in mutual scratching of backs. So as the podcast grew, products started to come out of it. There is actually a branded coffee. It's a custom grind. I got samples sent in the mail, which, hey, if you ever want to alert the local authorities, have a custom coffee grinder send you about 10 1-ounce packages of powder in the mail. And it doesn't go over well. They didn't show up with the dogs, but I can only imagine what they were thinking. So anyway, Did you let them try it?
I know, right? They sent samples, and I basically said, I like 1, 7, and 9, and then they mm-hmm. combined those, and these were very custom roast. I'll plug them here, Mr. G Coffee Company. They are a custom coffee roaster for the boating industry. Turkey Hill, the Inn of Turkey Hill happens to carry them. So that's how we connected. So my logo, my name is on bags of coffee. Mm-hmm. And at about the same time, and I've been toying with this idea for a while, just trying to figure out the format and everything to it. I wanted to do a book because in high school, this is going back a ways, so go with me here. In high school, Monty Python and the Holy Grail was the pinnacle of comedy. And I happened to have a book that was the script. And I would read it. I would literally read it And I would love it. I would love that feel. And I looked at my format and I said, man, I bet I could do a volume series of the Coarse podcast, coffee table book, where it is literally the interview transcribed and with host notes in the margins, because I take copious notes on my sheet and I have every sheet saved since episode 4. I didn't save 1, 2, and 3, whatever. But I have them all, and I thought, boy, we could focus local first. I got a handful of folks who, have become friends because of the show or here in the area. And it's great. And so I sat down to it. And as with most ideas that I come up with, it sat and it sat and it sat until I want to say I reached out to Jerry. I think that was the case. I hope that's the case, Jerry, Dr. Wemple. I apologize if I'm misquoting reality. I do it frequently. But in any case, we got in contact and we said, I think there's an idea here. Oh, because we met at Fog and Flame. It was Professor
Ensminger
and Professor Wemple. We met, and I went down there with this idea thinking I was going to have to sell it, really sell it hard.
Yeah.
I maybe got 2 words out of my mouth, and they're like, cool, how many do you want? I'm like, really?
Oh my God.
Is that how this works? Because that's phenomenal. And, true to form, everyone's been a blessing. Everyone's been an absolute bomb, just awesome. Currently we have all the episodes transcribed. We're working on the Where Are They Now? I have recipes from each of the guests to include in the book. And so it's really going to be a cool thing. I think now we're kind of more in the publishing house search. I think we'll get there.
Cool.
I know we'll get there. Hey, if nothing else, folks got to work with some pretty cool material. I think it's cool anyway.
It sounds cool. Is it going to be a series or is it going to be a single one?
I think it's going to be wait and see what happens with the first one.
All right.
Because if that one hits and people like it, well then I think it'd be cool. I think, I think the concept, again, this is all based on my perception of it, is interesting. You don't really see anything like that. When's the last time you saw a book based on a podcast?
Welcome to Night Vale.
Okay.
It's completely different, though. It's completely different.
Poking holes. But I mean, it's kind of a cool step across from medium to medium.
Yeah. I mean, multimedia stuff is cool all the way around. This is a podcast type thing that's going on a blog about an English department in a university. It's crossing boundaries.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, there's just something to still, and maybe this is the English major in me, that physical book, that feel, that just, there's something to that.
The weight of it actually being
we'll
there.
hope. But again, none of this would be possible if it weren't for Bloom University, specifically the English department, and their wonderful preparation of these very, very capable students. I don't think I was that capable in their age demo. I think I was a couple steps back.
I'm not
very
as capable
impressed.
as the people around me.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so you've got an intern working for you now from Bloomsburg.
Yes. Yep. And I've had two prior. Two prior. So this is number 3. We'll be looking to spring to continue and, hopefully keep things moving.
Yeah, I know they got the word out. I've seen the emails about it.
Nice.
Yep. Very recent.
Yeah.
Professor Wemple involved again.
I'm going to go all Wolfgang Puck. The next intern has to come and make an omelet. That's going to be the...
Oh my God.
That's going to be the benchmark. Oh, making an omelet's easy. I could teach you in 10 minutes.
I cannot.
Easy stuff.
No, I burn the pan.
No.
I can make scrambled eggs. That's what I can make.
Wow, that's the start.
I can do poached eggs. All right. Bumping back to interns once again because I have to talk about them. So what goals do you have in mind for your interns who help you out with this? What goals do you have in mind for their experience? What are they going to learn?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I think goals from my seat are twofold. And there I think that's the teacher in me that thinks of my goals for them, not just my goals for me. I think, and I unfortunately have heard horror stories about folks going and interning and just basically being driven into the dirt. And it's whatever. Like, look, if you're going to take an intern in, you should have an inherent understanding that you're there to help them along as much as they are there to help you along. You know, and I think if you enter into that with that understanding, you're good. My goals for the podcast are obviously continue the journey of construction and publication forward. It's that simple. It really is. There's some micro tasks down off that, which we've already discussed. That's it for me. When it comes to the student, the intern, one of the things that I've had the incredible blessing to do, and still have this, is work from home and work a very free-form schedule a good amount of the time. Let me be clear. People will give you so much guff about that. People will infer to you that you're not really, I'm making air quotes here, working. It is harder. It is exponentially harder than going into an office.
Yes.
Hands down. Throw 3 kids into the mix, it's a little crazy. So I think one of the biggest lessons that I like to try to convey is the lesson of freeform. Hands off. I'm going to tell you what my expectations are. You have the week to do it. I might give you some framework, some deadline, but really what I want to see the intern do is develop their own style of doing something, their own method of getting from point A to point B. Because I think really developmentally at this point, that's an emerging skill for your traditional university students. You've been handed deadlines your entire career. You've been told when to eat lunch the first, 12 educational years of your life. Yeah. You've been told when to arrive, when to leave. College, it's a little less, but at the same time, you got to go. Me, I'm like, okay, here's the end goal. How do you want to get there? Because I'm more interested in hearing how you want to get there because I've been thinking about this nonstop. I know how I think, and look, I sat on it. So maybe what I think isn't right. I want that freshness. I want those ideas. And I think the other goal that I have for interns is to develop in them some confidence to express and produce content based on my content that's theirs. I think a lot of times, and honestly, I'm batting 3 for 3. One of the things I have to explain is like, look, this is mine, sure, but you're here with me now. Own it with me. Enjoy it with me. Develop it, massage it, make it something, take it further. Even if we move at 1%, we're moving at 1%. And if it's your idea, then it wasn't one I had. And how awesome is that we're kind of learning together. So, just that confidence to step forward with an idea, because I'll tell you, as an entry-level person, that's, in whatever field you're in, that's going to be how you get to the next level. When you can put your hand up or send that email that says, I was thinking, : cue the idea. So, being self-driven is the one, confidence is the other. And I think probably just organization overall, because there's a lot of moving pieces to this, and to come into it midstream and keep track of things is probably, not the easiest thing. But a lot of times in whatever field you go into, you're going to be plunked into projects. Yeah. You're like, oh God, all right, I got to play catch up. That's just the way it goes. I got put into one for pharmacogenetics.
That's a big word.
Yeah, it's the study of biomarkers in clinical trials. I don't know what they are, but the storyboards needed to go out the door in 48 hours. I'm like, all right, cool. Figure it out. So figure it out. There's the name of the last goal. Figure it out. Confidence, self-motivation, figure it out. Which, if you watch Letterkenny, that's funny. If you don't, start.
I started it. Couldn't get past the accents.
Oh.
But yeah, I like those goals. I like how they tied back to your experiences with getting it started, depending on your friend as someone to help you along and gain your own confidence. You're helping these interns gain their own confidence as well. I think that's awesome. Big fan of organization in general.
Yeah.
Not for me, for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me throw one more goal back, and this is a goal for me. of the internship. And it is, and you mentioned this earlier, giving back to the educational culture that created me. You know, college, I think in general, you could probably make a pretty generalized statement and say like, probably some of the most developmental years if you are the traditional student. Like if you've gone off and fought in a war and you're coming back non-traditional, it probably doesn't matter that much from a social development standpoint. You've already arrived. But for me, to be in the town, to continue to give back, you know, I did a demo kitchen actually for the summer program where they bring the youth from Philadelphia or so. They bring them into town. And what I made chicken piccata, simple salad with a simple soy, olive oil, lemon dressing, and there was one other thing. But, you know, it's just so cool to be selfless, to be that servant back to your community, back to the, you know, people that made you. So that's my goal. That's my goal. My goal is to always be giving back because I've certainly gotten enough given to me. Build a longer table, not a higher fence, as they say.
All right, I think that's it. Unless you want to do some shameless plugs. I see you have a shirt on.
Shameless plugs?
Yeah. Some merch on there.
Whatever could you possibly mean? We just turned 110 episodes. The Coarse Grind podcast is your premier source for all things culinary expertise and hearing the story of the artisan behind the plate that arrives to you at the table, not just viewing the dining experience as a point A to point B experience, viewing it more as a narrative, as a story, and understanding the hearts, minds, and souls that are behind the pass, making your plates. New episodes constantly coming out. Actually, I'm going to have an individual who just won the chopped baking competition this season. Taryn, her name is, so be watching for that. And I've got about 3 other episodes with some Top Chef alum lined up. You definitely want to stay tuned to that. The Coarse site is coursegrindpodcast.com. That's just got the episodes. Best bet is to go out onto the YouTube channel and subscribe, COARSE, Coarse Grind Podcast, as well as on iTunes. And I'm sure there's other sources that carry me that I don't know about. I still get like emails and IMs from people. They're like, hey, did you know your show's on? I'm like, no, I had no idea. Bravo Network actually cited an interview that I did with one of their chefs and put it on their site. And I'm like, all right, well, nobody asked me, but I'm not going to complain. So anyway, check it out. Coarse Grind Podcast, COARSE Grind Podcast, coming straight out of the 17815.
Do you have an Instagram or a Twitter?
I do. I am the Shawn Rosler on Instagram. I'm Shawn Rosler on the Book of Face. Twitter, I am at Rosler, which is dangerous when Uwe Rosler is a German soccer player, and he got in some kind of trouble with a club about 2 years ago, and all of a sudden I wake up and my Twitter is blowing up. I'm like, what's going on? My hand's up in the air. I'm like, that it's not me. It's not me. You're looking for the umlaut over the O.
It's not me. Listen to my podcast, though.
Listen to my podcast. Oh, if you think I didn't plug the living hell out of that, I absolutely did. I'm like, look, no such thing as bad press. Let's go. And just kept trickling it out there. So we're inching up on 1,000 subscribers, which is pretty cool. You know, again, never really thought about those kind of goals, but with 1,000 on the horizon, it's kind of like, oh, well, I could deal with that. So, but again, check it out for your listening pleasure. If you're the Apple devotee, definitely check it out on the podcast app. And if you're otherwise and just on the go, check it out on YouTube. Comments. And tell you what, I'm going to make a deal. If you listen to this and you comment on any episode, when's this going up? Thursday, okay. If you comment on the YouTube channel or you leave a review of the Coarse Grind podcast on podcasts now through November 15th. I think that's a fair gap.
Yeah.
I will collect everybody's names, everybody's information, and I will put you into a drawing. One of you will get a podcast t-shirt. Awesome. Cool? There you go. So it pays to listen, people.
All right. I think that is all for tonight.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Shawn.
You got it.
That was awesome. Not sure how many people are going to listen to this, but
I'm not sure how many people listen to mine either. Don't worry about it.
All right.
The disappointment goes away.
All right. Thank you, and good night.